go.
Today I've got the Eskute Spark X electric fat bike. And with a name like Spark X, you know it's got to be good. Or is it? Is it just another run-of-the-mill fat bike? Or have they put a little spark in it to make it different? Okay, that's enough with the spark talk. Let me just start the review. Okay, so spoiler alert, they have done some things to make this stand out. But first, let me talk about the run-of-the-mill stuff. Starting off with the speed, which is fast as most of the fat bikes in class, topping out at 28 miles per hour for both pedal assist 5 and throttle. In order to hit 28, I did have to increase my cadence, and when I did, the bike was doing all the work. I couldn't feel any resistance. Now, a couple of things that I liked as far as speed is the bike's speedometer was accurate with my speed app, only a half to 1 mile per hour off. That's a little thing, but you'd be surprised with how many bike speedometers are not accurate. And that's something that I personally like to know, especially when I'm riding a trail with a speed limit. The second is the cruise function with the throttle. After you hold it for about 5 seconds at a constant speed, it sets. And it's a feature I liked because the throttle isn't that nice. It's just kind of cheapy feeling, and so the less I have to touch it, the better. The acceleration is also the same as with any other fat bike. Now, from a standstill, it takes about a revolution for the power to engage. It takes about a half a block to hit 20 miles per hour. The big difference with this bike is the delay in power while moving. It takes around 2.5 revolutions for the power to come back on, which is a full revolution more than what I typically see. Now, as far as brakes, they are as run-of-the-mill as you can get. The X has a 120mm hydraulic that does provide plenty of stopping power. Moving on to hill climbing ability, that too is pretty much average. There was a good mix of mine and the bike's power to get me to the top of this 26% grade. If the hill was any longer, I don't think I could have made it. My legs were burning pretty good just in that short section. Now, before I get into the main things that make this bike unique, I want to take a second and talk about the things I didn't care for, and that's the transition in power between pedal assist and throttle. For example, when holding the throttle, which is what I usually do to get going, if you begin to pedal, the power shuts off for about a second until it routes power to the pedal assist. And then if you stop pedaling, it's delayed again for another second until it reroutes back to the throttle. Now, if you release the throttle at the same time you begin to pedal, the delay in power, as I mentioned before, is about 2 revolutions. So there's always going to be a power void when switching between pedal assist and throttle. The only other thing I didn't like was the short length of the handlebars. And with a short and tall frame, you do sit up higher, so your center of gravity is raised up. I was a little bit nervous taking my hand off the handlebars, and I did have to slow down when taking sharp turns. Alright, so let me talk about the more unique features of the X. The most obvious one is the built-in LCD screen. It's something I don't typically see, and I thought looked pretty cool. I didn't like how dim it was though. I had it turned up all the way using the app and still had a tough time seeing it in the sunlight. And speaking of the app, there's not a lot you can do in it. The main feature is the auto lock that will lock the bike as you move away and unlock it as you approach. Moving back to the bike, I like the rubber pads to block the charge port and the battery on-off button. Some bikes are typically a cheap plastic and they have a tough time staying in. I thought the horn was louder than most e-bikes, and I like the nicer grips and softer saddle. The last thing that's unique about the bike is the motorcycle style headlight. This is something I usually see on moped style bikes, not your standard all-terrain bikes. Now, with every review, I always do a range test, and I thought the X did pretty well. My app recorded 23.9 miles with 1,572 feet of elevation gain. My average speed was about 22 miles per hour, and for about a mile of that test, I did head off-road. That's where most of the elevation gain came from. Anyways, I was curious to see how the CST 26x4-inch tires and the hydraulic front fork suspension would hold up on some rougher terrain. And the answer to that is not the best. Well, the tires were fine. I had plenty of traction, as you would have guessed. It's the suspension that got me. It's a little tough. It doesn't give as much as I would have liked. Now, maybe that will loosen up over time, but out of the box, it was quite stiff. The key for off-roading is just go slow. Overall, I thought Eskute did a pretty good job of making the X stand out with the built-in LCD screen and app. Now, if you have any questions about the X, be sure to hit me up in the comments. As always, I appreciate you guys hopping on here and checking out my content, and have a good day. Look, I'm riding without any hands. It's wonderful.